Hey guys, it's me Deepti and you're watching me today on my show Something Indian with Deepti. But today I wanted to focus on Selva Ganesha. Why I wanted to focus on him? Say hi Ganesha.
Hi.
Why I wanted the camera and the limelight to be just on him because he went from Singapore to Canada. Now so many people do this thing. So what is it that makes Ganesha so special? Because instead of taking the route of going by air, he decided to go by land and by sea. So are you the first one here in Singapore to do so, Ganesha?
I'm not so sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if I'm the first Singaporean to travel from Singapore to North America or to Canada without taking any flights.
How long did it take you to actually, this travel? How long did it take you?
It took me 9 months.
9 months. So
Yes.
Clearly you were in no hurry to reach Canada.
Yeah, you can say so.
Why did you go to Canada? Actually, I want to know that.
So I went to Canada to study, but why study in Canada? Because it was the cheapest amongst all the cities that I've shortlisted. So I shortlisted a few cities, and Montreal was one of them. And yeah, in the end, I decided Montreal was the place to be because it was cheap, or it was at least the most affordable, and also because it was culturally quite interesting. It's a good blend of French and English.
What do you study there?
I don't want to put this in the video.
Okay, never mind. So it remains a secret what he wants to study. Never mind. So, like I said, you were in no hurry to reach Canada. That's why.
That's right.
But yeah, even in today's day and age, it is very challenging to travel from one place to another without taking any flight, because usually people are in a hurry. What made you decide that you don't want to go by air and you want to travel by land and water?
Because by traveling, with planes, you just fly over countries, continents, large tracts of land. You literally just skip them. But if you were to do an overland route, an overland trip, you not only see things that you would otherwise not see, you also experience cultures that you didn't know, you didn't understand well, you didn't even know exist. You will be in places you didn't expect to be. You will meet people and learn their stories. People whom you didn't even know exist. And that's the reason why I did an overland trip, because I wanted to see what there was between here and Canada.
And since you were traveling for 9 months, I am sure you were, of course, it wasn't that you were traveling light. I'm sure you had quite a few things. So did you pack a genie in your bag? You ordered and he brought whatever you asked for. I mean, how heavy was your baggage?
So my bag, I carried a backpack, a 68-liter backpack that was around 20 kilograms. And I had a small green day bag that I hung in front of me. And that was pretty much it. Oh yeah, and I also had a tent. I bought a tent in Shanghai, so it was along the way that I bought a tent. And I was traveling with it too. So one 68-liter backpack, one tent, and one small day pack.
So may I ask you, how many international borders did you cross between Singapore and Canada?
I went to 23 countries, including Singapore. So I assumed I crossed 22 borders.
And how many times did you exchange the currency?
I never really keep track of that. I changed currencies whenever I needed to. And in some countries, especially in Europe, they used the same currency. So, yeah.
And when exactly did you take this journey?
I did it from 30th November 2018 to 31st August 2019. So that was about 9 months, 75 days. Not really sure about the exact figure.
And is this the first time that you're back here in Singapore after you took on this journey?
No, so I started school in September 2019 and I came back for the winter holiday in December 2019 for about a month before flying back to Canada for the semester. And this is my second time here.
Okay, but now I see that everybody here is talking about you, be it on social media, be it the news channels. So suddenly, how come this thing happened that this is for the second time that you're back here in Singapore. So how come this thing happened that suddenly you are in news everywhere?
It's a good question. I'm also trying to figure out what went wrong the first time I came back. But I think the reasons was because the first time I came back to Singapore, after I settled in Canada, I came back for just 2 weeks. I mean, it was a month holiday, but the other 2 weeks I spent them in Bangladesh. So it was more of like a quick trip to quickly catch up with friends and family. Yeah, this trip is a longer trip. This time around, I'm in Singapore for about 6 weeks. And so, yeah, I had time to, write about my travel. And I did so during quarantine. So I was confined to a hotel room for 2 weeks. It was really boring. And it was this boredom that, sort of nudged me to write an article to one of Singapore's largest media outlet, which is mothership.sg. And something very good came out of this, boredom. And that is, and once when the article came out, my name, was everywhere.
Yeah, and now I think you are one of the shining stars here in Singapore, because I think you have become an inspiration for many youngsters.
I hope so.
So, on behalf of all those youngsters, I want to ask you this thing, that how did you convince your parents? Because, see, it's not an easy journey to take on, and you are just 22. And when you took this journey, you must have been only 20. So as a parent, I'm sure it was a big thing for them to say yes to what you were asking. And if anybody is watching you and he or she wants to convince the parent part, so what is the trick to convince your parents for something as adventurous as what you have done?
I think I'm lucky and privileged that my parents were quite chill. They weren't the controlling type. And they were like that from a very young age, from when I was a very young, maybe after primary school, my mom sort of took a hands-off approach. My dad was always adopted a hands-off approach. So yes, I didn't really needed to get the approval for a lot of things, be it for this trip or other trips or other activities that I did prior to this trip. And in some way, that was a good thing because it allowed me to explore myself. I didn't need to contend with, parent approval, which many times can scuttle lots of very interesting plans, can stifle creativity, in my opinion, I feel. So yeah, I didn't need to contend with that. And I don't have any tips for anyone, with parents who are not like mine. I'm so sorry.
So I think go by the gut feeling then in that case, if your parents, because I'm sure it is a big task for many of the children taking parents' approval. And, not just the parental approval, I think finance also plays a huge role if, you are depending on your parents for the finances. Who financed your journey?
So I financed it myself. I saved up all the cash that I earned during my national service years. And also I was a tutor. So I tutored English and French, and it was by tutoring and also saving my NS allowance, my national service allowance, that I, gathered the cash to fund this trip.
How much did it cost you, the whole journey?
Around $10,000 Singapore dollars. And to be honest, until today, I still haven't done a very detailed calculation yet. So I don't have a precise figure, but unfortunately.
Roughly, you would say that it costed you around 10,000 Singapore dollars.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's pretty okay, I would say.
Yeah, for a 9-month trip, 23 countries,
yeah,
$10,000 is...
It's pretty okay.
Yeah, it's really... it's almost impossible, I think.
So were you on a shoestring kind of a budget, spending the minimum amount possible and not spending wherever possible?
I tried to reduce my spending as much as possible. So on the road rather, I think there are 4 things that you can categorize your spending into 4 things. Accommodation, transport, food, and miscellaneous. So miscellaneous is usually entry tickets to attractions, activities. So for accommodation, I reduced it. It's possible to reduce it to 0, and I did it most of the time when I was on the road by staying at the homes of locals. I used this website called couchsurfing.com, which is sort of like free Airbnb, but I feel like it's more than that because it's a cultural exchange. It's an exchange. It's 2 people meeting together, 2 people with common interests meeting together, sharing their way of life, and part of it is, and one small part of it is is staying at a local's house for free. It's couch surfing is just not free accommodation. Secondly, when I couldn't find couch surfing hosts in certain cities, what I did was I stayed at very cheap hostels. When the very cheap, and in certain places when the very cheap hostels were not so cheap, I resorted to tenting, pitching my tent, and tenting at city parks. Sometimes slept at train stations, and in one instance, I camped at an abandoned part of the Great Wall of China, an abandoned and crumbling part. For food, I just ate street food, which in many parts of the world are very affordable and hygienic. Till today, I dare say that I didn't experience any food poisoning whatsoever. My rule of thumb is this: if the food is served hot, preferably piping hot, then it is safe to consume. Transportation can also be reduced. You can spend $0 on transportation if you really give it a try, by hitchhiking. So hitchhiking is there are many ways to hitchhike. You just stand by the side of the road, you put up a thumb, or you can write your destination on a piece of paper or cardboard and stand by the side of the road. Or the third way, by approaching people at a fuel station. And that's my preferred way, because you get to interact with people before you accept their lift, accept their offer. And hitchhiking. And in cities, it's very hard to hitchhike within cities. So what I did was I just walked a lot, which was very good exercise. And for the miscellaneous spending, I'm glad to not to say that I didn't do any activities or didn't visit places with entry tickets, but my trip was mostly people centric. So I was okay with skipping tourist highlights and some and tourist activities in favor of, let's say, spending more time with the locals, or exploring local neighborhoods and seeing how the locals lived.
Because I was going to ask you this question, that were you a typical tourist while on this journey, or you know but you said that you didn't particularly go to the places which were like on the tourist maps, so you preferred mingling with the locals more than going to the landmarks of that particular place.
Yes.
So which country out of all these 29 countries, 23 countries, so which country would you say was most challenging, and why?
I think some countries were, I think every country was challenging in some ways. In Europe, where people expect it to be the least challenging, it was quite challenging financially because it was quite expensive. In Iran and Turkey, I did have problems because I don't speak Turkish and Farsi. So, in terms of there was a language barrier, an inherent language barrier. So if I had spoken Turkish or Farsi, I'm pretty sure I would have had a more in-depth experience. So that was a challenge,
And which country would you say was? I'm sure every country offered you something different from the other, but which of the experiences would you like? If you have to rate the countries based on the experiences, which would top your list?
I think my time in Central Asia, so Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, because it was really easy to hitchhike in these countries. I think I never stood longer than 30 minutes for someone to, stop, pull up right in front of me and offer me a lift. In Europe, whereas I've waited a whole day and no one has picked me up. So I like these countries because it was easy to hitchhike, and many a times, when someone offers you a lift, it morphs into, them treating you to a meal, and before you know it, they've invited you to their place, and you're staying with their family for the next few days. So the people of Central Asia, especially Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, I will say that they were the most memorable part of this trip because of their hospitality, because of their curiosity.
And how did you cope with the temperature? Because Singapore is a tropical country, you do not get into the extremes. But while you were traveling 9 months on the road, 23 countries with different temperature zones. How did you cope with the temperature?
I think it was easy. So I left in November, which was sort of already winter in the northern hemisphere. I reached China in February, which was in the dead of winter. And it was during this time that I bought a winter coat. And yeah, thanks to that winter coat, I managed to survive the brutal Chinese winter. I was lucky when I was in Central Asia, so Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan. Very lucky that it was spring by the time I reached these places, so the temperatures were less harsh, more hospitable, hovered anywhere from 10 to 20, which isn't terribly cold. I think the country that was the most harsh when it came to temperatures was Iran, because when I was in Iran, it was 40, 45, sometimes it even sort of touched 50, especially along the Persian Gulf. And I would say it's harder, in terms of when it comes to temperature, it's harder to deal with heat than cold, because when it comes to cold, you can just dress in layers and be warm. But with heat, you can be naked and you still feel it. So yeah, I think the hardest was Iran, because I was in Hormuz Island, where it was 50 degrees Celsius, even higher at times, and I did a bit of hiking in that oppressive heat, and yeah, I really felt it.
Did you ever, I have to ask you this thing, because it's with so much of heat or any extreme weather, it's easy to fall sick. So during this entire trip of yours, did you ever fall sick?
Not because of the temperature. I fell ill because of the altitude. So I got altitude sickness when I was in Tajikistan, in Khorog. So Khorog is one of the highest, if not the highest, settlement in all of the Soviet Union or ex-Soviet Union. It's perched higher than 4,000 meters above sea level, where oxygen levels are thinner. So when I was there, I did suffer from altitude sickness. I did have a terrible headache. I felt nauseated. I wanted to vomit. Thankfully, didn't vomit, didn't fall terribly ill, but I told myself that I needed to get down to lower altitudes, and so I cut short my stay in Horog by a day.
So was there anybody to look after you when you were going through all this? Any host of yours or?
No, I mean in Horog I stayed with at a hostel. I mean, it wasn't even a hostel; it was just like a roadside lodge. So no, I just took care of myself. I just lay on my bed, didn't go out much. It was cold, so yeah, just slept under layers of blankets, and that's it. And that's how I took care of myself. I think I think prevention is better than cure. So when it comes to taking care of yourself, it's not only about how you take care of yourself once when you're ill, but to also take care of yourself before you became ill. So I took care of myself by going to lower altitudes, because I knew if I had stayed there, I would become sick. Yeah, so I took care of myself by
But during this long journey, when such adversities, come across, do you ever had moments of self-doubt when you just wanted to leave everything and just take a next flight back home, or no, not back home, but take a flight and just fly away to Canada straight away? Moments of self-doubt anywhere?
Absolutely, especially when I was met with challenges which I couldn't control. So, for example, hitchhiking, standing by the side of the road, seeing this tens of hundreds of cars passing and no one stopping, despite standing there for a few hours. I did ask myself, or even visa issues. For example, visas for Turkmenistan, which are hard to get. And of course, it wasn't under my control, so it was just based on luck, or whether the person who is issuing the visa liked my face or not. So in these situations, I found these situations the most challenging, the most, how would I say, demoralizing. I told myself, for hitchhiking, for example, I told myself, these people, they don't really owe me anything. It's their right to stop or not. So if they stop, then it's good for me. But if they don't stop, then it's their right, you know. So don't be too upset about it. Don't take it personally, you know. Just be patient and wait for the next ride. The next ride will definitely come, and in 99% of the cases, the next ride came, be it the next few minutes or a few hours later. And also, I told myself, you know, for example, the visa issues. I told myself, you know, if they don't issue me a visa and I have to go back, then, you know, so be it. You know, but be patient. Just hope for the best. You know, because you never know. The visa could be issued to you. The visa could not be issued to you. You don't know yet. So don't think too much about it. Just be proud of where you are already. And yeah, that was a very good coping mechanism.
And did you ever call your parents back here in Singapore and share with them whatever problems you were facing? What were their advice to you at that time?
Not really. I didn't really share any problems with them. I think they would just ask me if I've eaten well, how am I feeling sick? We communicated through WhatsApp, and I didn't really see the need to share with them my problems then. So no. In fact, it was only after the article came out that they found out that, you know, I did face some really huge problems while on the road.
Did you ever get into any kind of trouble while on while on the journey? Any serious kind of a trouble?
Absolutely. So there was this host in Tajikistan, in Khojan, Tajikistan. He seemed nice at first. You know, he had a childlike sense of humor, which I was okay with. Honestly, I found that adorable. But one night, when, you know, he found out that I was talking to another local, and the other local wanted to show me around the city too, and he became very jealous. He called the other local. He happened to know the other local because they studied at the same university. He started screaming on the phone, and, you know, it was a 15-minute argument before he cut the call. But when he cut the call, he shouted at the other local, "Stop stealing my friends." He then took his mattress, placed it in front of his door, and decided to sleep there. And all this happened so quickly, and I found it very childish and amusing, more than, you know, frightening. Yeah. And so he slept in front of the door. He cut off my internet access because I was using his hotspot. So I was cut off from the rest of the world. And that was about 7 p.m., 8 p.m. So like any other person who would have been, you know, somewhat kidnapped, I just decided to go to bed early.
Sleep over the problem, is it?
Yeah. And, you know, because I slept early, I woke up early around 2, 3 a.m. And he was sleeping by the door. So I very quietly packed my bags, my backpack and my day pack, and then I jumped out of a window to escape from his place, and I escaped successfully.
He became kind of possessive about you, isn't it?
Absolutely, a bit possessive and jealous, which I found honestly comical, more than, you know, frightening, because he wasn't really a threat. He was never a threat. I felt more like, you know, he was just jealous, and, you know, as I said earlier, you know, he was very childlike.
Yeah. So during this journey, definitely you made so many acquaintances. But did you make any friends?
I made lots of friends, actually.
Are you still in touch with them?
Absolutely. So on social media, I've added lots of them, be it on Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp. In many parts of the world, especially, you know, in Central Asia, like Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, or even in Iran, social media is such a huge thing. And whenever I see some of my acquaintances' profiles, I get a bit demoralized because they have, you know, a few tens of thousands of followers, and my, you know, abysmal followers count, you know, just doesn't compare.
Don't be disheartened by the followers, because I think it takes time to
Absolutely,
build a
absolutely.
brand. And you started very recently, because I think you started giving interviews and people came to know about your journey quite recently. I have to say this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have to ask you this thing here, that what is more difficult, or, you know, difficult or easy, whatever, being on the journey or talking about the journey?
I would say talking about the journey, because I've lived through it. So to me, it's because I've done it. I've experienced it. It's not as surprising or as wow as what people who have never done it would feel. And also because I've given many interviews, I've also talked to friends and family about it. The story sort of becomes very repetitive.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So what is the one question that you have been asked, the most frequently asked question?
What's the greatest challenge on the road? Which country you like the best? Is it dangerous to travel out there? And because, since I brought this question up, is it dangerous to travel out there? I think many a times when we think that something is dangerous, it's not because it's dangerous per se, but it's just because we don't know enough about it. So we often equate not knowing with danger, which isn't true, because if you don't know something, that doesn't mean it's not dangerous. I've been to places that many Singaporeans and people elsewhere don't know exist. And I'm a living proof that those places are not dangerous. Either that or I'm lucky. But I can say that I was never in dangers for the most part in most of these places. And so yeah, are they dangerous? Personally, no. Should you be fearful to visit these places because you think that they're dangerous? No. I mean, you're probably fearful because you don't know enough of these places. So you are fearful of the unknown.
Yeah, and it's always a good idea to know about a place before you're taking the leap. But I think in your case,
I took the leap before knowing about the place, which has its pros and cons, because often I don't plan that much before I travel. I have this mantra, this traveling mantra, and that is, if you plan too much, you're just going to see things that that exist. You're just going to be in situations, and you're just going to experience things you expect to experience, and But if you don't plan that much, if you're not fixated on a plan, what's going to happen is that you are going to, first of all, be in places that you never know exist. You're going to meet people whom you've never met before, and you're going to experience situations that you never expect to experience. So just take this leap of faith into the unknown, and trust me, it will be a memorable trip.
So have no roadmap to be on the road, huh?
I would say have a roadmap, but just don't draw any line on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it take its own course.
Precisely.
So I have to ask you about the food thing. Like you said, if it's hot, it's served hot, served fresh. But since you travel to so many countries, I'm sure you ate a lot of different cuisines, which was like sometimes you are able to take it and sometimes you are just not able to take it. So some food related experiences, if you can share with us.
I think the best food in the world is Thailand, because it's such a huge cuisine. It's also quite varied. So you have rice meals, you have noodles, you have bread, you have bread not that much, but you have meat, you have soup. So it's a very rich cuisine, and that was my favorite. Honorable mentions would be the Iranian cuisine. Really nice kebabs, rice. The flavors tend to be sweet and sour, which I really like. The cuisines of Central Asia too, despite them being quite meat heavy. So lots of kebabs again, and rice meals with meat on the side.
What happens if you're a vegetarian?
Then you'll be in big trouble, especially in Iran and Central Asia, and even in China, because lots of the meals have meat in them. And the concept of being vegetarian doesn't really exist in many parts of this world yet. So you will have a lot of explaining to do. And even then, some people might not understand, why don't you want to eat meat? Because meat is seen as this luxurious good. And, why would anyone pass up the chance on, eating meat?
I have to ask you this thing, since you mentioned China, you ended up sleeping near the Great Wall of China.
On the Great Wall of China,
literally,
yeah.
Literally. So you were there, on one of the seven wonders of the world. Was it any different than sleeping under a mountain?
Absolutely. First of all, it was so cold. I thought I was going to die, so I couldn't sleep. In fact, I was sitting literally like that because I needed my toes to be warm, and the only way they could be warm was by tucking them under my feet, under my legs or my butt. So I'm glad to say I survived. And also, why is it special sleeping on the Great Wall as opposed to sleeping elsewhere? Because you have a seven wonder of the world all to yourself. That's something even money can't really buy, in my opinion. I feel. Yeah, the morning, the sunrise, where the sun rose, and I woke up and I saw, and I looked into the horizon, and the Great Wall of China stretched as far as the eye can see, and I was all alone enjoying this sight. I really felt rich.
Did you click a picture?
Of course, I clicked a few because my phone's battery was very weak, especially in very cold weather conditions, and yeah, so it was like it barely survived, but thankfully it survived enough for me to click a few photos.
You have to share those pictures with us.
Of course.
And I have to ask you a very nasty, rather a dirty question. What about the sanitization using the bathroom and the toilets and the bathing part?
So
out in the open?
Yeah, in Central Asia, many of the houses don't really have a toilet, as in the toilet is usually an outhouse, separated from the rest of the house. So you have to do your business outside the house, literally.
And how about when you were at the Great Wall of China?
And the Great Wall of China, I didn't need to answer the call of nature then, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, like we have been talking a lot about your journey. So what next?
I really don't know. As I made mention earlier during this interview, I don't really plan much. Let me just give you an example to illustrate how much I don't plan. I only started packing my bag for this 9-month trip 2 hours, prior to departure. So that's how last minute I am.
Good that you mentioned the packing of bags. Did you forget anything anywhere? Because you were on road or, on this journey for so long. Did you forget anything like a phone charger or a book or a piece of cloth anywhere?
So
did that happen?
I bought a sleeping bag in Singapore and I lost it on this first day. No idea where it went. And a phone charger. So I left a phone charger at one of my couch surfing host's house in Kazakhstan, in Almaty, and I only realized it after I've left his place. So I was a bit desperate because iPhones are not really that common in this part of the world. Not that iPhone chargers don't really exist there, but they're quite expensive. So I contacted him and I told him, is there any way I can get the iPhone charger? And he very casually said, oh, don't worry, I'll pass it to someone on the train to your next city, and you just go to the train station and collect it from him. And yeah, that's how I was reunited with my iPhone charger. But I did dispose of a few things. I did buy and dispose of a few things along the way because I had very limited space in my backpack. So for example, my winter coat, which winter coats are quite heavy, I bought my winter coat in Vietnam, in Hanoi, where and that was a place where I really needed some form of warm clothing. So I bought it there and I disposed of it in Uzbekistan because by the time I was in Uzbekistan, it was already spring and the weather was getting warmer.
What was more fun, sea or the land?
I didn't really get to see,
yeah, but you were on a ship, right?
Oh yeah, the cargo ship.
Yeah.
I would say the land.
Yeah.
Why? Because the sea was fun the first 2 days. I was on a cargo ship for 11 days. And the other 9 days sort of got a bit boring because it was the same old routine. But as I said, I think boredom has its good and has its bad. And one of the goods was that I actually started writing my book, The Long Direction, during this sea voyage because I had nothing else to do.
And I think people have taken very positively to your book, The Long Direction, isn't it?
Yes, there were a few reviews. Most of it were positive. In fact, all of it were positive. So yeah, I'm glad that people enjoyed it.
Yeah. And during this COVID thing, I'm sure things kind of changed 360-degree for you. Being out in the open to being confined in a room. So, how did you take to this change?
I think it was a very good change. It was a blessing in disguise. So, just some backstory on the book. After I arrived in Canada, I was just bogged down by so much of schoolwork, so much of administrative work to do, settling my immigration status, starting a new social circle from scratch, that the book was just not on my priority. It was, I told myself, okay, no, I can't do it for now, and maybe I'll never write a book. Then COVID came, and all of a sudden I had lots of free time, couldn't leave the apartment. And yeah, that was when, I had all of a sudden lots of time cleared up for me to actually write this book. And I seized that opportunity and I wrote my very first book, The Long Direction.
On the final note, any tip that you would want to give to anyone who's looking at you and who wants to be on a journey like that?
I think go with an open mind. As I said earlier, you probably have some fear in you, and that fear is probably because you think the road is dangerous. But trust me, it's not as dangerous as you think it is. Instead, you probably fear the road because you don't know what lays ahead of you. Yeah. So just go with an open mind, and trust me, you'll enjoy this. You'll enjoy the journey, whatever journey you're embarking on. And the same thing applies to life. Just go in with an open mind, and before you know it, you will experience things you never expected to experience.
Thank you so much, Ganesha, for taking out your time, and all the very best for all your journeys. May you write so many more books, COVID or no COVID.
Thank you so much, Deepti, for having me. It was a real pleasure.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to Ganesha, and I hope you also find some inspiration from his story. And if you have found anything inspiring, I'm sure you must have found a lot of things which are so inspiring about this very young boy who's only 22 and seen half of the world, if I may say so. So be like Ganesha.
Hello everyone. Hello. My name is Lily. My name is Lam. My name is Susu. My name is Wo. My name is Mai.
Mai. Okay, perfect, guys. You guys speak very good English.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you too.
Bye. Bye.